And as Les Trent reports, the music mogul who once traveled by private jet to all those mansions is now in a jail that is notorious for its bad living conditions.
A horrifying story unfolds behind the curtains of fame and publicity as the well-known and colorfully celebrated American hip-hop artist, rapper, record producer, and record executive, Sean Diddy Combs, also known by his stage names Diddy or P. Diddy was charged with unexpected accusations. This successful artist, who had raised many under his wings, is now facing serious charges that have graphic revelations about his parties, which are held in secret. The exposure of these crimes to light has pulled with them many more hidden ones that were silenced by his extensive name, him paying them away with sums of money. These charges included racketeering, sex trafficking, and prostitution, to say the least. Stay tuned and keep up as we go through his life and the major events that led to his incrimination. Diddy is an American rapper, record producer, and record executive, a 3-time Grammy Award winner who is credited with discovering and developing musical artists including the notorious B.I.G., Mary J. Blige, and Usher. Other than the simple name Diddy, he also goes by several other stage names like P. Diddy, Puffy, Puff Daddy, Love, and Brother Love.
Why so many name changes?
It depends on my mood, my vibe.
And Puff, where did that come from?
I can't tell you that.
In September 2024, Diddy was arrested on charges of racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. Before diving into all of this at once, let's see his upbringing and career a little bit. Sean John Combs was born November 4th, 1969 in Harlem and was raised in Mount Vernon, New York. Combs worked as a talent director at Uptown Records before founding his record label, Bad Boy Records, in 1993. He embarked on his recording career following the success of his first signee, the notorious B.I.G., for whom he served as manager and hype man. Combs' debut studio album, No Way Out, which was released in 1997, received critical acclaim, peaked atop the Billboard 200, and received septuple platinum certification from the Recording Industry Association of America. 2 singles from the album, Can't Nobody Hold Me Down and I'll Be Missing You, topped the US Billboard Hot 100. I'll Be Missing You was the first hip-hop song to debut atop the chart. His second and third albums, Forever, released in 1999, and The Saga Continues, which was released in 2001, both peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200, while his fourth, Press Play in 2006, peaked atop the chart. Combs then formed the musical group Diddy, Dirty Money with R&B singers Kalena Harper and Dawn Richard to release the collaborative album Last Train to Paris, which hit the audience in 2010, peaked at number 7, and was supported by the single Coming Home. His 5th studio album, The Love Album, Off the Grid, which he released in 2023, received moderate critical and commercial response. Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, Puff Daddy, and P. Diddy, has faced repeated accusations of sexual misconduct for incidents dating from 1991 to 2023. He has faced at least 10 civil lawsuits related to abuse and sexual misconduct, and has also faced accusations of rape, drug-facilitated sexual assault, child sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. And when he was brought to court, he pleaded not guilty to all his federal criminal charges from 2024. On October 1st, 2024, The Washington Post reported that a team of lawyers will be filing as many as 120 more lawsuits, covering assaults that took place during the 2000s and 2010s. The plaintiffs, 25 of whom are minors, are both male and female. Tony Busby, one of the attorneys on the team, said most of the alleged assaults took place in New York State. Half of the alleged victims say they reported the assault to the police, a doctor, or the FBI. Some claim to have been drugged or offered hush money. Potential defendants other than Combs are also to be named in the lawsuits. The names that we're going to name, assuming our investigators confirm and corroborate what we've been told, are names that will shock you. Busby boldly commented at a press conference in Houston. I'm talking here about not just the cowardly but complicit bystanders. That is those people that we know watched this behavior occur and did nothing. And I'm talking about the people that participated, encouraged it, egged it on. they know who they are.
As of now, do you have celebrity names?
I do. I think people already are suspecting some of the names that you might see. I think some of them will be shocking, though.
Andrew Van Arsdale of the AVA Law Group, which is working with Busby, said they have heard from some 3,000 people with abuse allegations against Combs, and the team is currently actively examining another 100 potential cases.
And never, ever in a 10-day period have we seen over 3,000 people come forward.
Erica Wolf, a member of Combs' legal team, told the BBC that Combs looks forward to proving his innocence and vindicating himself in court, where the truth will be established based on evidence, not speculation. In 1990, a woman accused Diddy Combs and another R&B singer named Aaron Hall of sexually assaulting both her and her friend. Between November and December 2023, he was accused of sexual misconduct by 4 women, including his former girlfriend Cassie Ventura, who alleged that she had been raped, trafficked, and physically assaulted by Combs multiple times over 10 years. Over the next few months, numerous civil complaints were filed by claimants who alleged that Combs had sexually abused them between 1991 and 2009, and many more are in the planning stages as of October 2024. He was further accused of sexual assault by his former producer Rodney Jones in February 2024, and in September of the same year, he was federally charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. In May 2017, Cindy Rueda, who previously served as Combs' chef, filed a lawsuit against Combs in the Los Angeles County Superior Court, claiming, among other things, sexual harassment and retaliation. The lawsuit was settled for an undisclosed amount in February 2019. Cassie Ventura, with whom Combs had a long-term relationship, filed a lawsuit against him on November 16, 2023, accusing him of rape, sex trafficking, and physical abuse. On May 17, 2024, CNN released surveillance footage of Combs physically assaulting Ventura at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Los Angeles, which was claimed to have happened on March 5, 2016. This incident was among the allegations made in the lawsuit. On May 19, 2024, Combs issued a video apology on social media, namely Instagram and Facebook, stating that he was truly sorry and that his actions were inexcusable, in his own words.
I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
Combs' assault on Ventura was stopped by hotel staff, after which Combs allegedly tried to bribe the staff, according to a federal indictment in September 2024. On November 23, 2023, 2 more lawsuits were filed. Liza Gardner alleged that Combs and guys Aaron Hall had sexually assaulted her and her friend in 1990. Joy Dickerson-Neal alleged that in 1991, Combs drugged and sexually assaulted her and shared the video of her sexual assault. On December 6, 2023, in a lawsuit filed in the Southern District of New York, a Jane Doe alleged that as a teenager, she was flown on a private jet from Detroit to New York by Bad Boy Records' then-president Harvey Pierre. While in New York, she claimed she was gang raped at a recording studio by Combs, Pierre, and a third assailant. Sean Combs' accusations did not stop at sexual crimes against women and girls. His unorthodox deeds extended to people of the same gender as his. This was noted on February 26, 2024, when producer Rodney Jones filed another lawsuit accusing Combs of sexually assaulting him during the time that he had worked for Combs, between September 2022 and November 2023. In May, another lawsuit by model Crystal McKinney came forward with accusations against Combs of sexually assaulting her way back in the year 2003. On May 23, 2024, April Lampros sued Combs in New York State Court, alleging battery, sexual assault, and negligent infliction of emotional distress between 1994 into the 2000s. On June 10, 2024, Derek Lee Cardello Smith filed a lawsuit in Lenawee County, Michigan, alleging that Combs had sexually assaulted him at a party in 1997. Due to Combs' failure to appear in court on September 9th, Cardello Smith was awarded a default judgment of $100 million and a temporary restraining order preventing Combs from selling assets. Both were overturned on September 18th by the same judge, who cited improper service. On September 10th, 2024, making the band's dawn, Richard filed a lawsuit against Combs alleging sex trafficking, sexual assault, sexual battery, false imprisonment, and more. In her complaint, Richard also confirmed that in addition to what had been done to her, she was a witness to the claims made in Ventura's lawsuit. On September 24, 2024, Thalia Graves filed a lawsuit against Combs, alleging he and his head of security drugged her, bound her, and raped her in 2001 when she was 25 years old, which she had recorded at the time. On September 27th, a Florida model filed as a Jane Doe, alleging Combs drugged, sexually assaulted, and impregnated her. Although she wound up having a miscarriage, she claims Combs' then-girlfriend, rapper Young Miami, had pressured her to have an abortion. On March 25, 2024, the Department of Homeland Security raided Combs' properties in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami using a Southern District of New York search warrant in connection with an unspecified ongoing investigation. Federal agents confiscated computers and other electronic devices. According to the Miami Herald, federal agents questioned Combs at Opa-locka Airport on March 25th. The agents seized several electronic devices before allowing him to leave for his planned vacation to Antigua and Barbuda. According to the indictment in March of 2024, during searches of Combs' residences in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, law enforcement seized various freak-off supplies, including narcotics and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. These were some of the many pieces of physical evidence found there to prove the truthfulness of those claims that these parties had more in them than just luxury drinks. One of the most startling examples of Combs' alleged control over those around him came from the description of apparent sex parties called freak-offs. This is something that Ventura and others alleged in their lawsuits against him. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, and to say ever so decently pleasured himself during the act, and even often electronically recorded. In arranging these freak-offs, Combs, with the assistance of members and associates of the Combs enterprise, transported and caused to be transported commercial sex workers across state lines and even internationally. Freak-offs were parties that mostly occurred regularly. These crazy parties that were unheard of before him sometimes lasted multiple days and often involved multiple commercial sex workers. So this is also kind of a flavor of the sex trafficking charge which he was accused of, among many other things. Sean Diddy Combs was accused and held for charges of 3 major accounts of crime: racketeering, sex trafficking by force, and transportation for purposes of prostitution. As indicated in the indictment, Combs and other members and associates of his enterprise wielded the power and prestige of his role at the business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Sean Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that he, Sean Combs, referred to as freak-offs. During freak-offs, Combs distributed a variety of substances to victims, in part to keep the victims obedient and compliant. Sometimes without the knowledge of the victims, Combs kept videos recorded during the acts of freak-offs, in which he filmed the victims engaging in sex acts with commercial sex workers. The news takes a whole lot of unexpected turn when it states that after these so-called freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. This is one significant indication that these crazy sex parties were totally draining and abusive to all who took roles in them. The indictment then provides more details about what Combs expected his employees to do before, during, and after these sessions. As was reported by Damon Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Combs did not do this all on his own. He then goes on to mention that Combs had been charged with RICO conspiracy. He had used his business and employees of that business and other close associates to do as he pleased. Those individuals were allegedly comprised of high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff. The indictment alleges that those individuals facilitated the freak-offs. They booked the hotel rooms and stocked them with supplies including drugs, baby oil, personal lubricants, extra linens, and lighting. Their activities also involved cleaning up after parties in case the hotel rooms got damaged. Also, they arranged for victims and commercial sex workers to travel for the freak-offs, and they delivered large quantities of cash to Combs to pay for the commercial sex workers. Federal prosecutors allege that Combs used the threat of violence as well as actual assaults to keep his alleged victims in compliance mode. The indictment announces that Combs maintained control over his victims through physical violence, promises of career opportunities, granting them financial support, and sometimes even threatening to withhold them. The forceful control over these victims went on to include tracking their whereabouts, dictating the victim's appearance, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and supplying them with controlled substances.
You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you tried to get in contact with me.
During and separate from Freak-Off's, Combs, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims at times by their hair. These assaults often resulted in significant body injuries that took days or weeks to heal. Combs also threatened victims' careers and livelihoods, including if they resisted participating in freak-offs. So a majority of that indictment covers that first count of racketeering conspiracy. This count of his accusation is regarding sex trafficking of a victim by using force or coercion or fraud to have that person engage in commercial sex acts that are either for money or something of value is promised or given. And there were allegations that Combs had made promises of opportunities and so forth to get what he wanted. He is also charged with count 3, which is related to the transportation of people for purposes of prostitution. The indictment is pretty comprehensive, but it doesn't have enough detail regarding what was actually happening. So the evidence needed to prove all of this was expected of prosecutors. It also doesn't include every allegation that has been asserted against Combs in numerous civil complaints. One of the missing parts of those allegations is the issue with minors. There's been a lot of allegations that there were minors at these Combs parties, which were heard before in other accusations that referred to the act. Damon Williams, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said that it was possible more charges could be on the way, but he wouldn't confirm the specifics. The absence of evidence that minors were in those parties, or even that Combs had anything to do with the accusations pointed at him regarding minors, has been an obstacle. In a letter filed with the court, Combs' defense team laid out a proposed bail package for their client and why he should be released pending trial. They explained why his actions over the last 6 months point toward cooperation, not avoidance. They also call out the government for seemingly making things more difficult than they had to be. His team writes that through counsel, Mr. Combs had promptly told the government that he had voluntarily come to New York, offered to tell them specifically where he was, and offered to turn himself in at the appropriate time. Even though Mr. Combs to New York and authorized his lawyers to tell the government of his location and offer to self-surrender, the government effected an arrest, which understandably is the government's right. However, the defense also mentions that the fact that he traveled to New York to self-surrender is also something the court should take into consideration. This bail package that the defense outlines constitutes several points that were presented to the court. 1, a $50 million bond co-signed by Combs, his mother, his sister, the mother of his eldest daughter, and his 3 adult sons. The $50 million would be secured by the equity in Combs' Miami home. The appraised value of that home on Star Island is $48 million. So in other words, he is saying that they can secure that he is not going to flee the country, nor going to break the bail conditions. These he affirmed by putting this home up. The defense says that Combs paid off the remaining mortgage of $18 million, so he could use it to secure a bond, the equity in his mother's home in Miami, which could also be used as collateral. And the defense goes on to say that Combs' travel would be restricted to the Southern District of Florida and the Southern District of New York. Combs apparently surrendered his passport to his attorneys right after the raids on his home. Following that, several of his family members, including his children, have surrendered their passports too. Combs' counsel says he is currently working on selling his private planes, so he wouldn't be able to just jet off to some exotic locale that has no extradition with the United States. In the bail package, it was also revealed that Combs wants to be under house arrest and would agree to GPS monitoring. Combs' attorneys also fired back at the assistant U.S. attorneys working on the case with letters saying that they reached out to him in the days before the raids but never got any reply. And then on March 25th, agents swooped in with a big show of force, which, according to his attorneys, was unnecessary. The filing also goes into Combs' philanthropic works, including his work with the Boys and Girls Club of America, his donations to open a charter school in New York, and his work fundraising to get PPE for frontline workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the end of the document, the defense team states Sean Combs has never evaded, avoided, eluded, or run from a challenge in his life, that he would not start now, as he had handled every hardship he would meet. This case head on, he would work hard to defend himself. and he would prevail. Contrary to the defense's letters and arguments, the prosecution had a different view. The prosecution team also sent a letter to the judge defending their assertion that Combs should be locked up with no bail. Their letter states that, as reflected by the gravity of the charges in the indictment, the defendant was dangerous and posed an ongoing threat to the safety of the community. If released, he remains a serious risk of flight, despite the conditions offered by his counsel. Most glaringly, the defendant also poses a significant risk of obstructing justice. The letter also goes into more detail about some of those specific situations that Combs was allegedly involved in at that point, to the lengths he would reportedly go to get what he wanted. For example, the defendant had ensured the victims would participate in freak-offs through coercion and violence. For instance, the defendant provided controlled substances including ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB to female victims so that they could and would continue to engage in freak-offs despite fatigue, physical and emotional exhaustion, and pain. Additionally, both during freak-offs and separate from freak-offs, the defendant subjected female victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse in part to cause them to engage in freak-offs. The defendant hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged female victims sometimes by their hair. At least a dozen witnesses will confirm that they have personally observed the defendant's violence towards women and/or the injuries sustained by women at the defendant's hand. Referring to the 2016 video that was leaked of Combs allegedly attacking Cassie Ventura out in LA, prosecutors say in this letter of prosecution, claiming that Combs used money and influence to try to keep that video from getting out. They mentioned that when a member of the hotel security staff had intervened, the defendant had attempted to offer their hotel security officer a stack of cash to ensure his silence. After the security guard refused the defendant's bribe, and after coordination between the defendant and his employees, the defendant's staff contacted other members of hotel security. Within days of the incident, the surveillance video disappeared from the hotel's server. These are the exact allegations put forward by Cassie Ventura, which has raised suspicion among spectators wondering if she was one of the cooperating witnesses with the government. According to reports of speculators, there is something to be said that the prosecutors here are believing the account of Ventura and possibly these other alleged victims. It is not just them filing a lawsuit against Sean Combs. They believe these allegations to substantiate criminal charges. The letter also references another alleged incident that was first revealed in Ventura's lawsuit last fall, when she alleged that Combs set fire to fellow record artist Kid C's car when he seemed to show interest in Ventura. According to the filing, in the early morning hours of December 22, 2011, the defendant and a co-conspirator kidnapped an individual at gunpoint to facilitate breaking into and entering the residence of individual 1. Multiple witnesses would testify at trial to the events surrounding the kidnapping and break in the latter.
The internal pain after being sexually assaulted has been incredibly deep and hard to put into words,
of which is corroborated by police reports and other records. Approximately 2 weeks later, the defendant's co-conspirator set fire to an individual 1's vehicle by slicing open the car's convertible top and dropping a Molotov cocktail inside the interior. Police and fire department reports extensively document the arson and conclude that the fire was intentionally set. Multiple witnesses would also testify to the defendant bragging about his role in destroying an individual car, prosecutors taking Cassandra Ventura's allegations as true. And again, while he's not specifically charged with arson, that's a part of the racketeering charge. Combs was arrested by U.S. Homeland Security investigators in Manhattan on September 16, 2024, after a grand jury indicted him. He was charged with sex trafficking and racketeering. Combs pleaded not guilty in his first court appearance at a Manhattan federal courthouse on September 17, 2024. During this court appearance, U.S. Magistrate Judge Robin Tarnofsky denied Combs bail and ordered him to remain in federal custody. On September 18th, a second judge, Andrew L. Carter Jr., denied bail due to concerns about potential witness threats and intimidation, despite his attorney's offer of a $50 million bond. Combs is incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Thanks for watching and subscribe to check out the next video as soon as it comes out.